Hey guys, this is Lala Legacy, and welcome back to another episode of Symphonic Rain. So, before we jump back in, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because that would mean the whole world to me, and after this video, if you like it, hit that like button too. Alright, let's jump in. Every once in a while, she parted her lips to say something, but every time her face contorted into a grimace, and she swallowed her words. I had already confessed my honest feelings, so all I could do was wait for her to answer. Do you really think I'm good enough? Relieved, I answered her promptly. Of course, I want to perform together with you after all. Senpai. So now, we've got to find a new place to practice. Yes. How about the practice rooms at school? I'd rather not go there. But no other place came to mind. It'd have to be somewhere where the noise generated by the foretell and vocals are tolerated. Practicing at the institute was a no-go, meaning my apartment was the only option left. LISE'S house flashed through my mind for a second as well, but that seemed like a bad idea, for various reasons. What about my apartment? I mean, it might be a bit sudden to invite you to my room and all, but... What's wrong? Nothing. I'm sorry, I don't mind practicing in your room. Really? If it's really no problem, then it's settled. Yes, it's fine. So, when will you come? This is the last day that you'll be able to come here this week, isn't it? Right. I have other engagements on Thursdays and Fridays. Then how about Saturday? Right. I considered inviting her for Natalie as well, but cut that thought quickly. Sure, Adietta couldn't visit this Natalie, but Lise had the right to spend it with someone other than me. Just meeting up on Saturday should be fine. After all, it wasn't like we were officially partners or anything yet, or anything. But say I were to ask, what if she complied? Or, although I figured it was unlikely judging from Lise's personality, what if she told me she wants to spend Natalie with me? I probably wouldn't be able to refuse. In fact, I would not refuse her. In all honesty, I didn't want to refuse her. I could come up with some excuse. Perhaps to cordially invite her to be my graduation partner. And it would all be for Lise's sake. And then, I would be... Wait, what was I thinking? Why would I need an excuse? Is something wrong? It's nothing. I was lost in thought. I see. Anyway, let's call it quits for today. I think Miss Cordell is still waiting outside. Yes. Took you long enough. Did you find what you were looking for? Miss Cordell was standing by the school gate to ambush us. Yes, as you could see. I stepped aside and showed Lise to her. That's quite a cute forgotten article. Anyway, you can no longer use this place. The back door will be locked from tomorrow forth. It's not a problem. Licecia, do you understand? Yes. Miss Cordell asked her for confirmation by calling her by name. Did she know her? Come to think of it, Grave knew about Asino and I being Miss Cordell's students. There might have been some connection there. Then again, she might have happened to ask for her name when Lise approached the old school building earlier today. In any case, I couldn't confirm anything with Miss Cordell with Lise present. Well then, if you'll excuse us... You're excused. I'll do another round, then change positions with another teacher. I have a lecture to give soon. Lise and I left Miss Cordell behind us and returned to the campus. Shall we part for now, or would you rather come to my apartment right... Whoa, wait. Ah! Wrong character! But, yeah, okay. You guys know. There's no problem with meeting on Saturday, but I thought you might want to give the place a checkup first. In that case, if it's okay with you, I'd like to see your apartment. Of course it's okay. Then please show me. As we walked from the campus toward the front gate, I heard my name being called behind me. Chris and LISE'S, was it? Torta. I turned around to see Torta standing there with a sullen look on her face. Did she finish today's practice session already? Are you two going to practice together? Excuse me. No, we were about to go home. Are you sure about that? Graduation's just around the corner, you know. True. I haven't even settled on what song to play. Although I asked Lise to be my partner, I have yet to receive a proper answer. We just smiled and performed more ensembles together. My only option was to give Torta a roundabout response. I see. Then can I ask you one thing? Sure, what is it? I'd like to speak with LISE'S in private for a bit. Do you have a minute? Well, I have some things to say to her, as her senior of the vocal department. Well, yeah, about that. Torta didn't know Lise was actually a foretellist. As I was busy coming up with a suitable explanation, Lise cut in. I don't mind. She even walked up right next to Torta. Lise, I have some things to discuss with her as well, Lise stated plainly. This was uncharacteristic of her, but I felt it was a good sign. All right, but we might catch a cold out here in the rain, so let's hurry inside first. Good idea. Is that okay with you, LISE'S? Yes. And so the three of us embarked toward the secondary school building. I stood gazing outside a window overlooking the campus. Torta and Lise had gone a little further inside and were now engaged in conversation. I was unable to discern their soft voices. Taking care not to observe them excessively, I shifted my gaze back out the window. It was rather unusual for Lise to speak up to someone. Since Torta didn't know anything about Lise, her conduct was to be expected. That may have been the precise reason Lise decided to engage the conversation herself. What would Torta think if Lise told her she was actually a foretellist? Would she get angry, taking it as proof that I haven't been serious about things? To be honest, that didn't seem likely to me. She would probably just shrug, smile, and tell me to do my best. And I could only give her one answer. I will. I had the feeling I had been lost in thought for quite a while. Glancing in the pair's direction once more, they appeared to still be discussing something. I was wondering if maybe it hadn't been that long after all. I checked my watch and saw that it's lasted for more than 10 minutes. What could they be talking about for so long? Was she trying to convince her that a non-vocalist couldn't become my partner? Nah. If so, she would probably tell me first. Besides, judging from Torta and Lise's expressions, which I could vaguely make out from here, it certainly didn't seem that way. No one seemed upset, sad, or anything like that. They just seemed to be intently engaged in conversation. In the best case scenario, they already finished talking about what I was worried about, and Torta was giving her advice as a vocalist. Since thinking about it wasn't accomplishing anything, I cast my gaze toward the sky once again. I decided to cease thought this time. I just waited for the conversation to pass. About 5 minutes later, I suddenly heard a voice approach beside me. Sorry for the wait. Without me noticing, they were now both standing right next to me. I'm sorry. It was really important, so please understand. It's no problem. Without revisiting the matter, Torta began walking toward the exit. The moment I looked Lise in the eye, she awkwardly turned toward Torta and followed in her tracks. There wasn't much else I could do but follow suit. I'm going back to the practice room. Hurry home so you won't catch a cold. I know. Upon my answer, Torta glanced up at the sky, trying to capture raindrops in the palm of her hand. What's wrong? Have you never seen rain before? Of course I have. There's nothing but rain around here. With that, she swirled around and turned her back toward me, leaving me bewildered about her intentions. Torta turned to Lise for her closing statement. Good luck! Thanks. She then walked back to the secondary school building without looking back. While Torta's actions left me a bit confused, there was no point in standing around here. I thought I'd talk a bit with Lise while we were walking. I was searching for the right words to say. I wanted to know what she and Torta had discussed, but I had no idea how to go about asking for such information. I was actually waiting for Lise to speak up, but she had her eyes cast to the ground as though in deep thought. I absently wondered if I used to make Ari and Torta feel like this sometimes. As I was about to tell Lise we had arrived at my apartment, she finally spoke up. Is it okay if we leave it at this for today? Huh? I will come here on Saturday. I don't mind, of course, but I'm sorry. I want to think for a bit right now. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Around what time should I arrive? You're welcome any time. I should be home all day. Understood. See you Saturday then. See you. In the end, Lise never told me about what happened with Torta, and I couldn't bring myself to ask. All I could do was to wave her goodbye. But something about Torta's attitude conveyed her approval of Lise. I went inside thinking about how it would be nice if it was just some song or something that they'd been talking about. I dried my hair with a towel and gave my room a quick look over. As per the promise I'd made with Lise, this would now be the place for us to perform our ensembles. Up until now, only people I was very close with had ever come over, like Ari and Torta. Since they both, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time reading. Since they knew how I was, and I felt comfortable around them, I was fine with having them over, but I couldn't help feel a bit embarrassed about the dreariness of my room. And I felt a bit bad for Lise, as she hated the gloomy practice rooms in the institute as well. Looking for something? Did she have a problem with me surveying my room? Nah, I was just thinking about how my room looks a bit plain. A little late to notice, aren't we? In the 3 years I've lived here, I've never felt very attached to this room, so naturally I never made an effort to decorate it. But then, Forney's existence livened things up a bit. You're a merry little fairy, though. What's that supposed to mean? You're complimenting me, right? I wonder about that. Forney gave me a disgruntled scowl. While now might not have been the best time, I probably had to tell her soon. Tell her that, before long, a girl with a beautiful voice was coming here to sing. Morning classes were over and I just finished lunch. Yet neither Miss Cordell nor Torta ever touched upon yesterday's events. It was looking to be another uneventful day. Torta had things to take care of and left early, so now I was alone in the cafeteria pondering my next course of action. There was still some time before the end of lunch break, and I was mentally debating whether or not to go to Graves' lecture today. If Lise hadn't shown me such relief when I told her I wasn't attending Graves' lectures, I would probably have attended at all costs, just to find out how Grave really was. And this was just my guess, but Lise probably just didn't want me to find out that her father wasn't exactly the most amiable of people. And she was probably being ignored and treated harshly by everyone because of this fact. Well then, what shall I do? I remembered having faced similar dilemmas here in the cafeteria before, and I've spent days wandering around the institute in search of a partner as well. Thanks to that, I've been able to meet Lise, and was trying to convince her to become my partner. I had a sudden change of heart. The truth was, there was nothing for me to worry about at all. I already knew most of what there was to know about Lise. That fact didn't change, no matter what kind of person Grave was. So, it would make sense for me to try and learn more about him. I stood up and checked the time. It was 5 minutes before the start of the lecture. If I hurried, I could get there and still have time to spare. Hoo boy. When I entered the room, slightly out of breath, the honor student from before was already seated, silently waiting for the lecture to start. Grave was sitting in a chair on the platform, looking over some score sheet. There were still 3 minutes left. I sat down in one of the seats in front of the classroom and attempted to recover my breath. Well then, today we will have a practical session. He skipped any form of introduction. Seemed like his way of doing things all right. You two, prepare your foretells at an appropriate distance from each other, he ordered, then went to stand in front of the platform. It was a bit difficult to put an appropriate distance between us, but I did as I was told and went to set up my foretell a bit farther away. Dividing the lecture room into 3 and placing our chairs at each of the borderlines, we were now sitting about 4 meters apart. I was now sitting even past the first row in a position quite close to Grave. Good. I will now have you play some pieces. Keep in mind that I will not allow any one piece to be repeated. Leaving no interval for us to respond, Grave continued. The foretell fundamentally differs from the other keyboard instruments. Without infusion of magical powers, it would not produce a straight note. One plays it not with one's body, but with one's heart. Remember this. There is no problem fine-tuning technique by repetition, but this is not important right now. Therefore, I will have you play a new piece every time. If you have questions, I will answer them. If you run out of pieces, this lecture will be over for you. I am well aware that you have only few pieces you could play. Dig deep into your memory to prolong your valuable time in this room. Mind you, I am not expecting much out of you. Play children's songs if need be. The ability to continue to play is key. With heart and soul put into it, of course. This is by no means a metaphor. Parse the intentions of the composer, embed it into every part, and express them properly. That is all. Begin. Grave declared in a single stream of words, then positioned a seat in front of the platform and sat down. Well, we have already begun. Another condition. Should you stop for over 10 seconds, or should I find your performance lacking, you are finished. The honor student and I exchanged questioning glances. We were asked to sit at an appropriate distance from each other, but it was pretty clear that at this range, our notes would interfere, making it hard for us to concentrate. Feeling courageous, I decided to complain. At this range, our notes will only interrupt each other, so is it okay if I relocate first? Continue as you are, concentrate on and it will stop bothering you. Grave answered unenthusiastically, clearly not caring about my insights. He then retrieved the score sheet that he'd left on the teacher's stand and cast his gaze down onto it. Since I wasn't going to get anywhere with this, I decided to go along with it and just play. What he said was perhaps correct. I could vouch for the fact that he was an excellent musician, not only in the foretell field, but in the musical field in general. Still, there were other, more decent ways to bring across one's teachings. Feeling rebellious, I started out with an incredibly simple etude. Grave turned to me, giving me a scornful look, then went back to reading his sheets. The honor student next to me began playing a famous foretell piece right off the bat. His utterly contrastive choice of pieces made me shortly contemplate whether or not to change my own. But I couldn't just cut off the piece halfway through, so I had no choice but to finish it. Stop! His voice was by no means loud, yet still came across as highly commanding. We both halted our performance and looked at him. Chris Verton, you need not stop. Continue. Apparently, I wasn't the one being asked to stop. I obeyed his instructions and replayed the etude from the start. I still tried to listen to what he had to say to the guy. I admire your spirit to attempt such a piece off the bat. However, are you trying to make a fool out of the composer? I told you to put your heart into it. I am not interested in technique, he declared, despite having only heard a few bars. He then glanced back in my direction. Caught in the act of staring, I quickly shifted my gaze back in front of me. Although I still had my misgivings, I was slowly starting to enjoy this lecture. I had to continue playing pieces no matter what. That was the feeling I was getting for some reason. However, was there really any meaning embedded into a simple etude? If so, where would this intent of the composer be located? All things considered, I couldn't imagine there really was such a thing. This composition, which taught basic keyboard presses and touching strengths, could accurately be called a practice piece. So, should it be sufficient to break down those basics and perform them as well as possible? With those thoughts in mind, I considered the meaning interwoven into the notes and tried to reproduce the piece as it was intended. Rather than the general flow, I focused on the accuracy of the individual chords, the strength of my presses, and the importance of the rests. After finishing the piece, I formed the next one in my mind, as I wasn't given the time to catch my breath. Shifting my gaze to the side, I noticed Grave had returned to his seat, seemingly not paying any attention at all to me. Without thinking too much, I fetched the next piece from my memory and began playing it. I picked another etude. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's how I'm going to say it. Next to me, the honor student started a similar practice piece. Grave was unenthusiastic as usual. I pictured the notes on the sheet in my mind as best as I could and continued. It was about 1 hour after that. I had finally run out of simple tunes and had to enter the realm of pieces designed to be accompanied with vocals. 10 seconds being a very short time, I had to start playing the very first piece that came to mind. It was the piece I always performed together with Forney. Before I realized, my fingers were already darting over the keyboard. Maybe I was getting used to this. I wrote this piece after I received one of Ari's letters. The meaning of the piece? Attempting to bridge a wide gap between lovers through letters. Of course, there were no vocals now. But I put my emotions into the tones of the foretell. I did that almost unconsciously by now. Despite having repeated this piece over and over again for years, my fingers slipped and hit the wrong key. My fingers were nearing exhaustion. Now that I'd become aware of that, they started to feel like lead, and my movements were getting clumsy. This was bad. The very instant I thought this, Grave called out to me. "Stop your performance, Chris Verton." "Yes, sir." Grave walked up in front of me, then continued while looking down on me. "That mistake is of no importance." "Huh?" "Such practice can be done at any time. What is important now is to play with emotion. Do you still not understand?" He closed his eyes, seemingly trying to recall my latest piece, and opened them again. "A farewell song, or some song devoted to one's lover?" Yes. Judging from your mistake, you got distracted. It was a good performance up to that point. It took a while for me to realize that he had just given me a compliment. And soon that understanding turned into awe. For all that he didn't appear to be listening, he had grasped every bit of intent behind the composition. "You composed this piece yourself, did you not? Forget about those. Play pieces by others from now on." Leaving just that, he returned to his seat. Although I still didn't quite respect him, I had to acknowledge his capabilities. Focusing, I played a piece I had learned here at the Institute. Time flowed along steadily after that. In the process, my performance was interrupted time and again, with Grave giving me instructions every time. If it was a famous piece, he would give me more details about the composer's background, sometimes adding extra bits of current affairs. By now, I had all but lost the will to oppose him and obeyed his instructions in earnest. Sometimes it took over 20 minutes to complete a single piece. In the end, having finally run out of pieces to play, I almost unconsciously began playing LISE'S piece. For one reason or another, I'd had the feeling it was best not to play this piece in front of Grave. But now that I had started, I had no choice but to continue until the end. Maybe this piece really was a no-no, or perhaps I just didn't play it with enough emotion, as Grave stopped my performance with one sharp sentence. "Where did you learn this piece?" Clearly, it had been the former reason. I probably couldn't lie my way out of this, so as much as I didn't want to, I decided to answer honestly. I heard it from a friend. "I see, so it was you, Chris Verton." "What do you mean?" Grave continued in a composed fashion. "Mind your own business, or you will no longer be allowed to live in this world. Do you understand the meaning behind my words? This lecture is over. Pack up quickly and leave." With that, he silently returned to his seat. He never so much as looked at me again. He ignored my very existence. "My orders are absolute," was the air he was giving off. I had no choice but to pack up my fortel and leave the room. I mean, that was a threat. Before leaving, I took a last glance at the honor student, but was surprised when I found he was no longer present. And when I finally got out, I realized just how much time I had spent in there. It was already dark out. This lecture took even longer than the one last week. Both my body and mind were exhausted. Besides the fact I had been found out by LISE'S father, I had been playing Fortel continuously as well, which no doubt significantly contributed to it. Put your emotions into it. That was all there was to it. But in my current state of mental exhaustion, I couldn't bring my mind to think about even Lise anymore. When I got home, I didn't even take the time to dry myself, but flopped onto my bed right away. I shouted out to Forney to wake me in the morning, but fell asleep before even hearing her reply. "Get up now or you'll be late!" Waking up to that voice, I noticed Forney on the verge of tears, desperately striking my cheek. Ow! "Ah, you're finally awake!" Huh? My body felt heavier than usual. It took some effort just to get up. Ugh, I'm still so tired. "Geez, I was worried sick! You didn't wake up at all!" Did it take that long for me to wake up? I checked the clock and noticed it was almost 10. Taking into consideration the time it took to prepare, I would barely make it even if I ran to school. "Why didn't you wake me up?" I wanted to say, but stifled it. "No matter how often I tried, you just wouldn't wake up." "Oh, sorry." "You didn't get up once after getting home last night. Stuff like that makes me concerned." Yesterday I practiced a bit more than usual." "Huh, so you really practiced that much?" Forney regained her usual demeanor, perhaps relieved to hear that. But I didn't have the time to humor her right now. "Sorry, we'll talk about it later." Okay." Forney, understanding the situation, took the sidelines from then on, simply watching over me in silence. I quickly put on my uniform I had left on the floor yesterday, washed my face, and went out. "I'm off!" After reaching the campus, I stopped running. I started walking normally to catch my breath. Looking at the clock, I let out a sigh of relief. While I wouldn't be able to arrive at Miss Cordell's desired 5 minutes before the start of class, I estimated that I would at least arrive before the bell. Sorry I'm late. Barely safe. I sat down and silently prepared my foretell. It looked like there wasn't any time for idle chatter. I finished preparing at about the same time as the official start of class. Good. Then, about today's lesson. She paused for a second. Chris, have you decided on a partner? Well, I couldn't say I had. Although we were going to perform ensembles at my apartment from now on, nothing at all was set in stone yet. There is one thing that's been on my mind. Do you intend to choose LISE'S as your partner? While I was fumbling for words, Miss Cordell hit the nail on the head. I figured it was a possibility when I met you in front of the old school building, but I never imagined it would happen. Miss Cordell interrupted my silence correctly. Do you know that she's a foretellist? Not only that, LISE'S Cesarini, Mr. Graves' daughter, yes. After hearing this, Miss Cordell rolled her eyes at me. If you know that much, then why? Weren't we free to choose whoever we wanted? Even so, you know what this means, right? I do. She began pacing around the room in deep thought. Unusual behavior coming from her. Having nothing further to add, I waited for her to speak up. Yesterday, I believe it was after Mr. Graves' lecture, Miss Cordell began abruptly. Then, looking at me nervously sitting there, she even broke a smile. I never imagined you would have participated in that lecture. Anyway, after the lecture, Mr. Grave came to me and left me with a kind warning. What sort of warning? Would you mind warning your student not to stick his nose into other people's business, he said. So you are now also warning me. It's up to you, really. Huh? What do you mean? According to the rules, anyone is allowed. Didn't you just say so yourself? Right. I just told you what he told me to tell you. Other than that, I am your instructor. I am responsible for you, not him. What is your point? Is LISE'S a good singer? I think so. Can you ask her to become your partner? I don't know. Then I cannot give my approval. You need to be more assertive. At least tell me you'll definitely ask her or something. If I do, will you let me? Good question. Perhaps I could pretend not to have seen anything. I have my own position to consider after all. I cannot endorse it. However, I cannot be held responsible for things that happen where I can't see them. Miss Cordell. Those words definitely didn't stem from irresponsibility. She didn't abandon her responsibilities. She simply left everything up to me. I understood that much. However, I have one condition. What would that be? Put on a convincing performance for graduation. Mind you, I'm not the one who needs convincing. Understood. Are you sure? Be careful not to make empty promises. It's not an empty promise, I think. In that case, good. Then let me hear it. That piece that you've been practicing. Miss Cordell seemed all too eager about this. Are you sure it's fine? What are you talking about? I don't know anything. I just warned you like I had to. Thank you. Then hurry up and begin, because depending on the result, I may not be able to keep looking away anymore. Got it. Full of determination, I positioned my fingers on the keyboard. Oh, am I actually gonna play? Nope. Okay, that's fine. Until the sound of my foretell disappeared from the room, Miss Cordell had been sitting still with her eyes closed, and then she muttered, "What a nice song." They weren't impressions of my performance, but those words alone confirmed for me that Miss Cordell would be willing to look the other way for me. Is it a love song? No. As far as I could remember from the lyrics Lise sang, it wasn't. I see. Then I must have been mistaken, but it's still a very good song. Nothing to criticize on your performance either. As much as it pained me, I had to admit that this was thanks to yesterday's lecture. I never imagined Miss Cordell would ever compliment me like this. Sure, I'd felt it to be a good performance myself as well. But without yesterday's session, I likely wouldn't have been able to get this kind of praise. There was still one thing that was bothering me, though. To put my heart into the piece. I'd received words of praise from Miss Cordell as a result of my doing this almost unconsciously. So did I put my heart into it as one would into a love song? Whenever I played this piece, my thoughts couldn't help but wander toward Lise. Her gestures as she sang, that beautiful smile she showed me every once in a blue moon. As I was mulling over these things, I turned back toward my foretell. Did I like Lise, perhaps? If you asked me whether I liked or disliked her, I couldn't deny that I liked her. But maybe the word like was slowly shifting toward a deeper connotation, something one would feel about a lover, like how I felt about Arietta. If so, that wouldn't be a good thing. Denying it in my mind or in words wouldn't change anything. If it was just Miss Cordell's misunderstanding, then that would be fine. But what if it wasn't? I would end up hurting Ari. Whether I wanted to or not. No, this was wrong. I was completely ignoring Lise and Ari's feelings. I awoke from my selfish train of thought and faced Miss Cordell. Did you finish thinking things over? Yes, ma'am. Well then, we still have some time left. Continue playing. Yes. I answered a bit befuddled, and began playing my foretell again. That's enough. Miss Cordell stopped my performance, not looking too pleased. She'd had me play a few times more, but I could no longer clear my mind like I could the first time. Or more accurately, I could no longer focus my thoughts on Lise only. This is where I'm gonna stop it because I could hear somebody knocking at my door. So, yeah, subscribe. I love you guys. And I'll see you next time. Bye!